leg drive for bench press. It's one of the most important things a person can do in powerlifting. Now, throughout this video, we'll kind of break down the barriers of what is leg drive, what's the purpose, how do you do it, but more importantly, we're going to also talk about the massive benefits it has with your bench press. So leg drive is the opportunity during your bench press into which you employ leg power to help you improve your upper body strength during a bench press. When we bench press, we have to have 3 points of contact. We have to have our shoulders, our hips, and our feet, so that all those parts of the bench are covered and that we are performing a bench press to not just the standards in general, but also in competition. Now, some competitions you have to have your head on your bench, or maybe your head can come off. It depends on the federation, but regardless of head placement, let's just focus on the 3 points of contact: the shoulders, the butt, and the feet. Now, when we do that, we're also creating the power position, which is the arch. Now, the reason why I say 3 points of contact are the shoulders, the butt, and the feet is because whenever you do the arch in the power position, your midsection, your mid back actually is elevated because there's an arch that's created. So you don't have to have your whole back on the bench. You actually just have parts of your posterior anatomy, like your back, your upper back, the shoulders, and the hips. Now, what is the purpose of leg drive? The purpose of leg drive is to help you become stronger with your bench press. Now, that's a very vague statement, so I'm going to break it down as we go. But whenever you're going to bench press, the thing about it is that if, for example, I'm someone who's very familiar with bench press, and I just grab the bar and do reps, maybe I don't have to think about my positioning or my technique as much. But because powerlifting talks about lifting the most weight possible to advance yourself in the sport, creating that power position and employing leg drive is what's going to help you understand how to control your bench press more efficiently. Because a lot of people don't think about this, but it's almost as important on how much you control your press to the bottom, as important as it is when the bar comes off your chest for the press. Because if you have bad technique to your chest, there's no reason for, at least me in this case, to understand you're going to do any better coming off your chest. Now, you do see people who chaotically bench press, but I want you to sit and think about that real quick. Who do you know that chaotically bench presses and can bench press a lot? It's probably not many people. In fact, it might not even be any people, because I've seen some guys who bounce a lot of weight off their chest, but the more I think about it, they weren't lifting as strong of weight versus powerlifters who I know who try to control the weight as much as possible in order to redirect the effort to the top for lockout. So the purpose is to really help us understand how to control the weight down so that we can deliver a better press after the fact. And like I said, the benefits are just everything I've explained up to this point. The benefits are that you have better control, better power output, and better chances of being successful with your bench press. So let's talk about how you promote leg drive. We talked about all the goods and how it kind of occurs and the main purpose, but how do we do the leg drive? So leg drive also has a lot to do with your setup. Whenever you bench press, you want to make sure you get under the bench and you want to retract your shoulder blades and then also depress them too. So what I'm saying by that is don't just let them go backwards, but also let them come down a little bit. Because when your shoulder blades retract, you're recruiting a lot of muscles in the posterior chain, more so the trapezius muscles. So the trapezius muscles are the muscles that go from like the cervical spine, so like your neck, all the way down that thoracic spine. So they actually take up quite a bit of your anatomy on the back. And when you do the shoulder retraction, yes, you're going to use more muscles than just the traps, but the traps are the biggest hunk of muscle that are going to take over for that scapular retraction. And when you do depression, now you're starting to work your lats a little bit more. And if you combine the traps and the lats, that's a big part of the top layer of your muscle anatomy on the back. Now, the reason you retract your shoulder blades and depress them is because when you do that, your back gets so tight. Now, when you bring the bar down and decelerate, you have all that strength in the back to help you control it on the way down. Now, hips stay on the bench. And then when you put your feet on the floor, here's how the leg drive's going to work. You want to, especially if the weight gets like 90% or above, you want to make sure that your feet are pushing off the floor, not necessarily at the press command. So a lot of people think leg drive means when you press, your feet have to push into the floor. But I argue your feet should be pushing through the floor before you even unrack that bench press. So imagine this: retract, depress, power position, get your arch, get your feet set. Now, with your feet, I like the feet to be flat. I think better surface area on the floor gives you more control. Some argue that doesn't matter. Just get on your toes. We'll talk about that another day. But for me, make sure that your feet, okay, are mostly flat, or if there's an effort to, maybe try to get them flat. And then when you bring your feet in, I think your feet should go behind your knees, and make sure your toes don't go forward or don't go completely out. There's like a fine in between. In fact, you might want to favor your toes a little bit more to the front. So you see my hands here? They don't have to be facing forward like when you're benching. They could be slightly out, and I'll explain why here in just a minute. But get your feet behind the knees, flat preferably, toes slightly out, because then that'll help you kind of anchor in and feel stronger versus toes just forward. The toes out also helps with like that lateral distraction of the bench. I see people who unrack the weight and they kind of side to side the sucker. So if you have your feet out, that helps you kind of balance and cover more lateral space. But whenever you're going to bench press and you're going to unrack, you see a lot of the guys who raise their butt up before they press. What you should do is you should raise your butt up, get your feet behind the knees, slightly out. And then when you're about to bench, bring your hips down just to touch the bench. Don't bring your hips down to completely rest, because now you're putting a lot of leg power on your feet before you even start to press. When you apply foot pressure in addition to retraction, depression, and get all those back muscles tight, now your body is insanely stable. And that's what we want. If your body is stable, it can counterbalance that pressing motion much more successfully. It's like the laws of motion. Every action has a reaction, but when the reaction happens on the bench, okay, so right here, when you press, your back takes the brunt of the movement too. If your back's tight and rigid and good with a setup, you're going to be able to control a lot more weight in that case. And then when the leg drive comes in, that's after the press command. So you got all this tightness, power in your feet. And then when you come down, you get tight, 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 tight. You hear the press command, or just in practice, you press after you've paused. When you hit that, push your feet into the floor, and that takes your effort next level into having more control with the movement, and it can counterbalance your pressing effort. If you set this up correctly, there will be no leak in performance. Meaning, if you had your toes forward, then maybe there's a leak in performance because you can't have all your power where it needs to be if your feet were slightly out. So setting all this up is very important, and most people argue the setup of the bench press might be more important than the actual pressing part of the bench press. But all in all, leg drive is insanely important. You understood the benefits, how to do it, and okay, here's a fun little tip with leg drive. What I would suggest is do all the leg drive work, do it for 3 to 5 working sets. You don't have to go super heavy every time, but work it. And then I want you to get on the floor and do floor press for 2 or 3 sets after. So my tip is to take away the feet after the fact. And I want you to see the difference in your performance. I want you to feel the difference. I want you to understand, wow, if I don't have my legs, bench pressing is really hard. So hopefully today you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure you subscribe, like, leave a comment. We want to have comments in our sections so we can have intelligent conversation with people. We really enjoy our efforts, and we hope that you subscribe and like our other videos and can be a part of other discussions we have as well at powerliftingtechnique.com. Thank you for your time, and talk to you soon.